Imagine it's 3 in the morning. You're lying in the dark, the blue light from your phone screen hitting your eyes. You just wanted to check the time, but your finger instinctively tapped the news icon. And here you are. Economic forecasts are plummeting. Political polarization has reached a boiling point. Forests are burning somewhere. New conflicts are erupting elsewhere. You feel that heavy knot in your chest, a mix of anxiety, powerlessness, and exhaustion. It feels like the world has gone mad, and you're the only one trying to keep your balance on the deck of a sinking ship. We're used to thinking that this is a unique state of the 21st century, that our chaos is special. But that's a lie. Let's travel back 1,800 years. No smartphones, no internet, no nuclear threat. But there's a damp, cold tint on the border of modern-day Austria. Outside, you can hear the shouts of barbarians and the clang of weapons. The Roman Empire, the most powerful machine of civilization in history, is cracking at the seams. Inside the tent, by the dim light of an oil lamp, sits an old man. He coughs, his lungs filled with the smoke and dust of endless campaigns. His body aches from an ulcer. He is the most powerful man on earth. At his word, cities are erased from the face of the earth. But he isn't writing orders for an offensive. He isn't drawing maps or dictating memoirs of his greatness. He's writing a note to himself, in small, hasty Greek letters. "Stop being distracted," he writes. "You are just a small soul carrying a corpse." This man is Marcus Aurelius, and the book you might have seen on the shelves of Barnes & Noble, titled Meditations, was never intended to be a book. It's a historical accident. It's a miracle it even reached us. The original title of the manuscript is Ta eis heauton, which literally translates to himself. It was a personal diary, the therapy of a man who was on the verge of a nervous breakdown every single day. This is the most striking discovery one can make about Stoicism. We're used to seeing marble busts, cold, empty eyes, impassive faces. We think of Stoics as people who had their emotions surgically removed. But open the first page, and you won't see a stone idol, but a living person desperately trying to find footing amidst panic. He doesn't write to teach us. He writes to keep himself sane. He persuades himself not to be angry at the idiots in the Senate. He convinces himself not to fear death, which stalks him in the form of a plague. He reminds himself that, despite his title as emperor, he is merely a speck of dust in the infinity of the cosmos. And that's why his words hit so hard today. If the most powerful man of antiquity, who had everything, money, armies, palaces, felt the same anxiety, the same insecurity, and the same desire to hide under the covers that you felt this morning, then the problem isn't the world around us. The problem is our reaction to it. In the next half hour, we won't be delving into boring history of philosophy. We'll be cracking Marcus Aurelius's personal code. We'll explore the tools that allowed him to manage an empire in flames while retaining his humanity. This isn't a lecture. It's a survival guide for a world that's trying to break you. But to understand how this medicine works, we first need to understand how severe the illness was. Do you think 2025 is a tough time? Welcome to Rome in 160 AD. Welcome to true hell. When we think of the Roman Empire, images from the movie Gladiator come to mind. Pristine marble, sun-drenched villas, vineyards, and endless victories. Historians call this period Pax Romana, the Roman peace, the golden age of humanity. But if you zoom in, if you dust off the centuries, you'll see a picture that painfully resembles our evening news headlines, only much, much worse. Marcus Aurelius's reign didn't begin with triumph, but with disaster. In 165 AD, Legions returning from the east brought not only trophies, they brought an invisible killer. Historians call this the Antonine Plague. Most likely, it was smallpox. Imagine New York or Los Angeles if the mortality rate wasn't a fraction of a percent, but 25%. In Rome, 2,000 people died each day. The streets were piled with corpses because they couldn't be removed fast enough. The economy collapsed. The army was decimated. People were in a panic, looking for scapegoats, praying to gods who didn't answer. Does that sound familiar? The feeling of helplessness in the face of an invisible threat that locks you indoors. Marcus Aurelius ruled in such a world of masks, fear, and the smell of death. And while the empire rotted from within due to disease, it burned from outside. The northern borders were breached by Germanic tribes. Marcus Aurelius was not a general by nature. He was a bookworm, a philosopher who dreamed of a quiet life in a library. But fate threw him out of the palace. He spent almost his entire reign not in Rome, but in damp, dirty tents on the banks of the Danube, commanding troops in an endless, grueling war. Imagine the CEO of a huge corporation forced to live in a trench under artillery fire for 10 years. But the most terrible blow came not from barbarians or plague. In 175 AD, his best general, Avidius Cassius, a man Marcus trusted like a brother, declared the emperor dead and proclaimed himself the new ruler. Civil war. Betrayal from his closest circle. Political division that threatened to tear the country in half. It seems, how much can one person endure? We often look at successful people, politicians, billionaires, celebrities, and think, well, of course, it's easy for them to talk about peace. They don't have my problems. Listen carefully. Marcus Aurelius and his wife Faustina had 13 children. 13. Only 5 lived to adulthood. He buried his sons and daughters one after another. He watched them die of fever, and there was absolutely nothing he could do about it, despite all his power. He was the most powerful man in the world, but he couldn't save those he loved. Imagine him waking up in the morning in a cold tent. His back aches from the hard cot. Beyond the tent flap are legions awaiting his command, and enemies who want his head. The plague rages in Rome. His general has betrayed him, and in his heart is a fresh wound from the loss of yet another child. Any other person in his position would have simply broken down. He could have become a tyrant like Nero. He could have turned to drink. He could have taken his own life. No one would have judged him. But instead, he lights a lamp, takes a papyrus scroll, and writes, "In the early morning, say to yourself, I shall meet with the meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful." He doesn't complain. He prepares his mind. Marcus Aurelius survived and maintained his sanity not because he was born a superhuman. He needed a tool. He needed a mental technology that would allow him to function at the epicenter of hell. And he found this technology in Stoicism. For him, it wasn't a beautiful theory to discuss over a glass of wine. It was armor. And the first element of this armor is the ability to distinguish what is in your control and what is not. So, here we have a person trapped in a cage of external catastrophes. How does he start his day? With prayer? With curses? No. He begins with a simple mental exercise that psychologists today call locus of control. Stoics called it simpler, the dichotomy of control. Imagine you have a filter in your mind. You pass every thought, every worry, every event through it. The filter divides everything into 2 very simple categories. The first is what depends on me. The second is what does not depend on me. It sounds ridiculously simple, but 99% of our stress, anger, and frustration arise because we confuse these two boxes. We spend an enormous amount of energy trying to control what is beyond our power. You're stuck in traffic on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. You're late for an important meeting. You can hit the steering wheel, yell at other cars, curse the whole world. But will it change the flow of traffic? No. Traffic is in the second box, not mine. And what's in the first? Your reaction. You can get angry, or you can turn on a podcast you've been meaning to listen to. You can ruin your day, or you can use that time. The choice is yours. The stock market has crashed. Your investments are down. You can panic, refresh the app every 3 seconds, and pull your hair out. This is an attempt to control the uncontrollable. Or you can reevaluate your long-term strategy and accept that volatility is part of the game. Someone left a nasty comment on your social media post. You can spend 3 hours in a furious exchange with an anonymous troll. Or you can simply click hide and forget about it in 5 seconds. Another person's opinion of you is their opinion. It's in their box, not yours. The Stoics refined this idea into an elegant metaphor. Remember it. It's the archer's metaphor. The archer's task is to do everything in their power to make the shot perfect. They must choose the right bow. They must draw the string with the right force. They must aim carefully and account for the distance. They must release the arrow smoothly without a jerk. All of this is within their control. But the moment the arrow leaves the string, their control ends. A sudden gust of wind can deflect its flight. A bird might fly in its path. The target might move at the last moment. All of this is beyond their power. Success for the Stoic archer is not hitting the bullseye. Success is making the perfect shot. The outcome is secondary. Marcus Aurelius applied this principle on an imperial scale. Could he stop the plague with a single command? No. But he could organize doctors, sell palace property to feed the hungry, and maintain calm so as not to sow panic. Could he make the barbarians love Rome? No. But he could command the legions with maximum efficiency and valor. The outcome of the battle, the course of the disease, the loyalty of generals, all these are gusts of wind that can deflect the arrow. His task is to be the best archer he can be. This is an incredibly liberating idea. It doesn't advocate for passivity. On the contrary, it urges you to focus all your energy on what truly matters and let go of everything else. This tool works great with external events and impersonal forces, like the economy or the weather. But what do you do when the main problem isn't traffic or viruses? What do you do when the main cause of your stress is other people? People. That's the most complex variable in the equation of life. You can ignore the news. You can adapt to the weather. But you can't escape people. Your micromanaging boss who just scheduled another pointless Zoom meeting. That uncle at Thanksgiving who brought up politics again. The anonymous internet troll who decided to ruin your day just because they could. If you think you have it tough, just for a second, imagine Marcus Aurelius's work environment. The Roman Senate. A place where ambition was currency and flattery was the language. Where every second person dreamed of taking your place, and every first person smiled to your face while holding a dagger behind their back. Marcus hated court life. He despised the falseness, the constant struggle for power. But he couldn't quit. He was the emperor. How did he deal with this daily deluge of human pettiness, foolishness, and treachery? He didn't try to change them. He didn't lecture them on morality. He used two powerful mental techniques. The first is what could be called premeditated pessimism. We know about this thanks to one of the most famous entries in his diary. Remember this, because it can change your morning. Every morning, before getting out of bed, Marcus Aurelius performed a ritual. He would tell himself the following: "Today I shall be meeting with interfering, ungrateful, insolent, treacherous, envious, uncharitable men." Pause and reflect on that. He didn't tell himself, "Today will be a great day. Everyone will be nice and kind." No, he prepared himself for the worst in advance. This wasn't an attempt to prophesy a bad day for himself. It was a mental inoculation. It was managing expectations. Why do we get angry? We get angry when reality doesn't match our expectations. You expect everyone to drive by the rules, and someone cuts you off, you're furious. You expect a colleague to appreciate your help, and they don't notice it, you're offended. Marcus simply removed these expectations. When he met a flatterer, he wasn't surprised. He thought, "Ah, here he is. I was expecting you." Irritation disappears when the element of surprise vanishes. The behavior of other people stops being a personal insult and simply becomes a fact of nature. Like rain. You don't get angry at the rain, do you? You just grab an umbrella. The second technique is even deeper. When someone treated him badly, Marcus asked himself, why? And the Stoic answer was radical. People act badly not because they are evil. They act badly because they are ignorant. They genuinely don't understand what is good and what is evil. The one who deceives you does so because they believe wealth is more important than honesty. The one who insults you does so because they think self-affirmation at someone else's expense will make them stronger. They are, according to the Stoics, sick. Their soul's vision is impaired. Would you get angry at a blind person who stepped on your foot? No. You would feel compassion. This shift in perspective changes everything. It turns anger into pity. This doesn't mean you should let them do whatever they want, but it does mean you stop taking their actions personally. Their poison no longer contaminates you. Marcus learned to manage external events. He learned to manage his attitude toward people. But there remained one more, the most significant source of anxiety that haunts each of us: the inevitability of the end, the finiteness of our time. In Silicon Valley, billionaires spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to hack aging. They see death as a technical problem to be solved. For Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics, death was not a problem. It was a solution. The Latin phrase Memento Mori, remember death, sounds grim, like the motto of a Gothic novel. But for the Stoics, it was the most powerful tool for a vibrant and meaningful life. Not to fall into depression, but to wake up. Consider this. Why do you postpone an important conversation? Why don't you start the project you dream of? Why do you tolerate a job you hate? Most often, the answer is one, I still have time. We live as if we have an eternity ahead of us. We act like immortals. And this is the main trap. The awareness of our own mortality acts as the most ruthless filter. It instantly burns away everything inessential. all the husks, petty grievances, fear of others' opinions, the pursuit of status, all turn to ashes in the face of the inevitable. Are you worried about what people at a party will think of you? Remember that both you and they will soon be dust, and no one will care what dress you wore. Are you afraid to take a risk and start your own business? Remember that death is the biggest risk, and it's guaranteed. All other risks compared to it are nothing. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This is not a threat. It's a call to action. It's a call to live with intensity, with focus, with awareness. Not to waste precious seconds on what doesn't matter. But there's another, deeper level to this practice. The Stoics called it the view from above. When you feel your problems are huge and insurmountable, do this. Imagine you're detaching from your body. You rise above your room, above your city. You see your state, your country, as a speck on a map. You rise higher and you see Earth, a small, fragile, blue ball hanging alone in the velvety blackness of space. Now, from that height, try to find your problem, your argument with your boss, your fear of an interview, your anxiety about bills. It disappears. It becomes so microscopic, it's almost comical. From this perspective, you see all of human history, the birth and death of empires. Caesar, Napoleon, Marcus Aurelius himself, all are just brief flashes in the endless river of time. And you are also part of that river. This technique doesn't devalue your life. On the contrary, it gives it the right scale. It frees you from the tyranny of your own ego. It reminds you that you are part of something much larger, and that your problems today are not the end of the world. They are just another grain of sand on the endless beach of history. When you accept your mortality and see your place in the cosmos, an amazing thing happens. You stop fighting reality. You stop yelling at fate, "Why me? Why did this happen to me?" Instead, you learn to say, "Yes, it happened. Now, what will I do about it?" And this brings us to the last, most powerful, and most challenging lesson of the Stoics, to the idea that turns suffering into strength, to the love of fire. So, we've learned to distinguish what we control from what we don't. We've learned to accept people as they are. We've learned to remember death, to live life to the fullest. But all of these are defense mechanisms. They are armor that helps us withstand blows. But there's another level, a level where you don't just endure blows, you start to love them. Friedrich Nietzsche, who read the Stoics extensively, encapsulated this in 2 words, Amor Fati, translated from Latin, love of one's fate. This is the most radical and most difficult idea in this entire philosophy. Amor Fati is not just acceptance. Acceptance is passive. It's when you grit your teeth and say, "Okay, I'll put up with this." Amor Fati is an active, passionate process. It's when you look at the worst that can happen to you, illness, betrayal, loss, and you don't say, "Why me?" but "Thank you." Sounds crazy, doesn't it? How can you love pain? How can you love disaster? Marcus Aurelius explained this with one of the most beautiful metaphors. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Imagine a forest fire. For a weak fire, for a small match, Any obstacle, a damp branch, a gust of wind, extinguishes it. But for a large, roaring bonfire, any obstacle is fuel. Throw a dry pine into it, it will flare up to the sky. Throw even a wet log into it. It will hiss at first, but then it will dry it out and consume it, becoming even stronger. Marcus Aurelius urged us to become such a fire. Were you fired from your job? This isn't the end. It's a chance to find a calling, not just a way to pay the bills. The impediment has become the way. Did your project fail? Excellent. Now you know 10 ways not to do it, and you've become smarter. The impediment has become the way. Did a serious illness limit your physical capabilities? Perhaps it's an impetus to develop your intellect, your soul, your relationships with loved ones to an unprecedented depth. The impediment has become the way. This is not toxic positivity. It doesn't mean you have to pretend you're not hurting. It's alchemy. It's the art of turning the lead of suffering into the gold of wisdom. Let's recall Marcus's life. The plague that killed his people forced him to become a more compassionate and generous ruler. The war that robbed him of peace transformed him from a bookish theorist into a seasoned leader. The betrayal of a general gave him an opportunity to show mercy, not vindictiveness. Even the chronic pain that afflicted his body sharpened his mind and made him seek solace in philosophy. Everything that should have broken him made him who he was. He was the fire that turned everything thrown into it into flame and light. This is the ultimate goal of Stoicism. Not just to achieve a state of serene calm, a kind of mental Zen garden. The goal is to become invulnerable. To become such that there are no bad events for you. There are just events. There is just fuel. This philosophy was forged in fire. It was tested in battles, in epidemics, in halls full of traitors. It worked for an emperor who ruled the world from a dirty military tent. And it worked until the very end, until his last night in a small military town on the empire's border, then called Vindobona. March 180 AD. The city of Vindobona, known today as Vienna. Emperor Marcus Aurelius is dying. He is 58 years old. He is exhausted by war, disease, and the burden of power. Around his deathbed gather his friends and his only surviving son, Commodus. They weep. But Marcus looks at them and, according to the historian Dio Cassius, quietly asks, "Why do you weep for me, and not for the plague and the death common to all?" Even on the threshold of eternity, he remains a Stoic. He is not afraid. He does not complain. He sees things as they are. His life is coming to an end, just as the day ends. It is natural. It is part of the order of things. His last instruction to his son was simple: do not forget your duties. After his death, what he perhaps feared most came to pass. His son Commodus proved to be one of the worst tyrants in Roman history. The empire began its long, painful decline. It seemed that all of Marcus's struggle, all his sacrifices, had been in vain. And what became of his small notebook written in Greek, the one called To Himself? It was not burned. It did not rot in the archives. By some miracle, it survived the fall of Rome. It survived the Dark Ages, wars, fires, and floods. Monks copied it. Scholars read it. It was passed from hand to hand until, a millennium and a half later, it reached the printing press. And then, the voice of the old man from the tent on the Danube spoke to the world. And here we are, in 2025. We hold in our hands, or on our device screens, the personal diary of a man who lived almost 2 millennia ago. And his words about anxiety, about loss, about the foolishness of others, about the search for meaning, sound as if they were written yesterday. Why? Because technology changes, empires fall, fashion comes and goes, but the human operating system remains the same. We are still afraid of the unknown. We still get angry when the world doesn't meet our expectations. We still seek silence within the hurricane. The lessons of Marcus Aurelius are not just philosophy. They are a practical toolkit for repairing the soul. The dichotomy of control is your shield. Memento Mori is your compass. Amor, Fati is your fuel. The world won't get simpler. The news won't get kinder. People won't stop being people. Chaos won't disappear. The only thing we can change is what happens between our ears. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask us to build him temples or worship his statues. His legacy is something far more valuable. It is proof. Proof that even in the darkest circumstances, in the face of war, plague, and personal tragedy, a person can maintain dignity, courage, and serenity. He showed us that greatness is not the absence of problems. Greatness is how we react to them. So, the next time you feel that heavy knot in your chest at 3 in the morning, remember the old man in the tent. Remember that you are not alone in your struggle, and that you have a choice. You can continue endlessly scrolling through your feed, fueling your anxiety. Or, you can put down your phone, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, as he did, what of this is within my power, and how can I turn this impediment into my way? The answer to that question can change everything.